You're listening to Turn on the Jets Live. You're listening to Turn on the Jets Live. You're listening to Turn on the Jets Live.
Well, that's fun. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Turn on the Jets Live. I'm your host, Zantz, joined by my co-host, Zantz Russo. Very, very special guest, Dan Essien of Badlands, host of Buck the Trend, the defensive line guru in my eyes. Guys, how we doing?
Doing pretty good. What's going on, fellas? Glad to be on with you.
Thanks for coming on, Dan. I feel good, man. We've made it through. We're pretty healthy going into week one. Next thing, I mean, we're less than 2 weeks out from Monday Nighter against Buffalo, so I'm pretty psyched, man. Steve, how about you?
I'm feeling good. It was good to finally meet Dan at the Badlands watch party. Thanks for everybody who showed up. It was a great time. I feel like we all were super nervous once, Rodgers was in the game, and then as soon as he took him out and we saw that touchdown, we all were feeling good. Stopped really worrying about the game and just had some good conversation about the Jets and just hanging out and meeting everybody. But it was a great time. Dan, did you have a good time?
Oh yeah, it was awesome. It was good to see everybody out there. There's a lot of people that showed up, where everybody came from, man. It was such an awesome, pleasant surprise to hear all the stories and see everybody's faces. So it was a great time.
I'm sorry I missed out, man.
You were definitely missed, Steven. You were definitely missed.
Anyway, fellas, we do have a football team to talk about, and the initial 53-man roster was released yesterday, and obviously a couple guys were claimed off. No one really of note, and the practice squad is still coming together. So, Dan, I want to pass it to you to start this off. What was your initial reaction to the 53-man roster? And then, Russo, you go.
Man, I felt like we had so many things that we were considering and so many avenues and possibilities we were considering, especially at wide receiver, that really at the end of the day, especially with the Corey Davis news, like towards before all this really started to transpire, I think it made things a lot clearer, made things a lot easier for the Jets, because I think they really like Brownlee, they really like Gibson, and in the end, they didn't have to make a choice; they just kept both. So, it turned out to be, I guess, less of a concern. I think there's still kind of conversations about whether or not they're as deep as they need to be at that position, of course. And you do see, Irvin Charles making the roster there. You're kind of like maybe there is something else on the way, you know what I mean? But I think that wide receiver group was really the one that everyone was kind of keying in on, and it's good to see that they got to keep Gibson and Brownlee. But I would expect that they're probably not done there before the season, but we'll see.
Russo, what about you? What were your thoughts on the initial 53?
Yeah, I think obviously I agree with Dan. I think the wide receiver position was probably the most surprising, because with the Corey Davis news, you figure, okay, like the battle between Brownlee and Gibson was probably going, they were going toe to toe. And if Corey Davis were to stay on the team, it was probably going to be one or the other. But then once Davis retires, like, okay, maybe there's a spot for both. But the Irv Charles thing is definitely surprising. Outside of that, based on kind of the way that the last year and then this preseason has gone, I'm kind of surprised that Bryce Hall remains on this roster, and I wonder what's going to happen there, because I really do think, like, going from starter basically in 2021 to the struggle really last year in spotty service, and then really this preseason just really has struggled to cover backups. He hasn't looked very good, so I'm surprised he remains. And I would like to say that I'm surprised that Ashton Davis made the cut, but I'm not, man. He's that guy. You can't get rid of him. But other than that, yeah, it was Irv Charles making the 53 and Bryce Hall staying on this team. I thought that was going to kind of shake out differently. But other than that, it seemed pretty chalk for me.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Hall, I think the main reason he made the team is because Eccles is suspended for week one. I think there could be a scenario where either he's A, cut after week one, or B, moved to the practice squad. So I wouldn't really put anything behind that just yet. I think they just wanted to have some depth because he does have starting reps, whereas nobody else, I guess, who they could have chosen does. Irv Charles also, I know you guys hit on this, and that was the guy I was going to talk about, because he always just seemed like this guy has been hanging around the last 2 years. We never thought he had a realistic path to the roster. But I think what they like about him is the size. I think he kind of has the Corey Davis type build. I think he's 6'4". Corey's about 6'3", and he's a little bit thicker of a receiver. So big body guy in case Lazard were to go down, they have that kind of target. But I was actually surprised, and we shouldn't have been surprised by this because, Salah hyped him up in Hard Knocks, that Surratt actually made the team. I, to be honest with you, did not think he'd end up making the team. I know he obviously had a good Hall of Fame game, but then you didn't really hear much about him since then. I know he was a little banged up, but I was a little surprised about that one. What did you guys think about that?
Yeah, that was that was definitely interesting. It was one of those where, because after the Hall of Fame game, of course, everybody saw Hard Knocks. Like Robert Saleh obviously clearly loves him. And so you're like, cool, like he has a great first game. That's going to really improve his chances, but he's got to show up a little bit more. And yeah, we didn't really see much else. So I think we're kind of just going off of, what we've seen. And then coaching staff has probably seen more in, private practice and all that. But, it's an interesting one. I think, as the head coach, you're going to have a few levers you can pull, of course, but, they weren't necessarily super deep at linebacker either way. So I think he probably took a little bit of the reins on that one, it feels like, but I don't know.
Yeah, definitely surprising. On this one, I kind of just have to yield to Robert Saleh. Like, a linebacker is kind of his bread and butter, so I trust in his judgment. And I think, from Hard Knocks episode 1, where he's saying that's his guy, it's really no surprise. But yeah, it was a big Hall of Fame game for him, obviously. But after that, it leveled out. But I trust in Robert Saleh, especially on that side of the ball and with that position specifically.
Yeah. One of the things that I know they've been talking about on Badlands, and I think it's definitely true, is that they're probably going to play a lot of 3 safeties. So I think that kind of will be like a de facto linebacker. And maybe they'll even line Jermaine up a little bit in a different spot because he's technically listed as linebacker, but we all know he's really an edge rusher. But like an edge is like, it's whatever you want it to be. It could be an outside linebacker or it could be a defensive end. It's really about like contingent on the scheme. And Dan, I know you could definitely go into that because that is your bread and butter, is all about defensive line play and edge pressure. So we could talk about that more later. But I do want to pass it to you guys to talk about Rodgers' debut, which we kind of talked a little bit about in the open. But Russo, what was your thoughts on seeing Aaron Rodgers finally taking a real life snap for the Jets? I know your eyes just lit up, and then I'll pass it to Dan.
It was obviously, you go into it and you're so nervous just to come out healthy. And we talked about it last week. Like, that Giants game is cursed. Sanchez, Pennington, but I really did. I supported the decision to play the starters, and we talked about it last week. I saw how excited the starters were to actually suit up and get one, quick run through in prior to game 1 of the season. But Rodgers specifically, it's so nice having that kind of quarterback out on the field. And to cap it off with a touchdown to Garrett Wilson, could it have gone any better? I guess if they'd done it on the first drive, that's probably the only thing that could have happened that would have been better. But capping off with a pretty just on the nose ball to Garrett Wilson for a touchdown to end it, that's just incredible. So having a guy of this caliber is something that Jets fans have never seen. It's just, we don't have anything to compare it to. It is next level in any comparison to anything that we've had in any of our fandom.
Dan, what about you before the tequila and beers were flowing?
Yeah, man, it was awesome. It was awesome. I think a lot of I think I talked to this with about maybe 5 or 6 people where we're all just like, man, it's good to see someone drop back and you're expecting all good things. You're actually surprised if it doesn't go well. The throw that went over Uzama was like, oh wow. That's supposed to
Uzama's fault, right?
Right. You're like, what happened there? Right. So it's just way different. It's way different. And it's we deserve this. It's been so long. It's been so long of fearing every drop back to have this kind of feeling of confidence. And it's not just us, obviously it's within the team as well. The type of drive that they had on the scoring drive, it's a little bit of a short field, but it's just a methodical drive, picking the defense apart, outsmarting the defense, getting them on their back heel. Those drives we're not used to those type of drives, right? But we have to get used to it now. This is just how it's going to be run. It's not it's just different. It's different when your offense is moving the chains, making progress down the field, giving your defense a rest, and then putting points on the board at the end of it. So it's beautiful. It's good to see.
It's the first time that you really had that glimpse of the Jets playing offense, in this era of football, these superstar quarterbacks. Because when you think about it, it's we had Sanchez who he had one really solid year, but then he imploded in 2011. And then obviously, we had our Fitz era, we had Gino, we had Zach, Sam, McCown. It just never felt like we were a modern day offense. And now we're seeing the quick game, just the different types of play designs, the rollouts. It's weird, but in the best possible way. And I'm you're just seeing that touchdown. It's just gorgeous. You're a Jet quarterback has never been able to do that in our entire lifetime. Even Favre, who was obviously, a wizard as well because of all his experience. he can't do the things that Rodgers can do with his arm. And
Exactly.
Garrett just making that play, it was just like perfect placement. It's just like you're just dreaming about what the potential could be with these two. And like we've been hearing about it all summer. The connection's real. It's only going to grow. And it's like Garrett's like, if he didn't get to 1,500 yards, if he stays healthy, like I would kind of be surprised. Like he got to 1,100 with 3 different quarterbacks, 4 if you count Strebler coming in for like a half. But like I'm just so giddy, and I don't even really know how to like feel because it doesn't feel real.
And you know, for all of us, I think for me though, the cherry on top is like getting the sneak peek under the tent and inside the huddle with Hard Knocks and One Jets Drive. Like that is just, it's spectacular. Just listening to him and the shit talking and getting mad in practice, but rectifying and getting the guys back in the right spot and going after, like it's just everything. It's tailor made for a Jets fan right now, and we're on top of the mountain. We couldn't be happier right now. It's incredible.
Our quarterbacks have been like deer in the headlights because none of them have known how to lead. They've always been these young guys who are not like, these superstars who've been there before. And it's like the second he walks out that practice field, like everyone follows his lead. Like I loved in Hard Knocks last night. He's like 17, come to my office. Like those like little things. You're like, this is just freaking sweet.
Yeah.
It's just, it's great. But I do want to move to another part of the offense because it's been, the biggest storyline throughout training camp. And now as we head into the season, the starting offensive line is set. Obviously, we have Brown, who's finally returned from injury over the last few weeks. We have Lakin, who is a Dan favorite. I know he was a little bit upset by his boy last year, but I think he's going to bounce back. It's a better offensive line year over year. We have McGovern for now, and then we have AVT and Mekhi Becton on the right side. So, Dan, you are a trenches guru. How do you feel about this offensive line heading into the season?
Yeah, so I definitely feel slightly better than I did, I would say, probably like 2 months ago, which is ironic because nothing really changed. It's just people got healthier and Mekhi Becton agreed to play right tackle, which is really the main thing there. So, yeah, I'm excited to see them in the run game. I think running right is going to be money. Like truly, if Mekhi Becton looks as good as he's looked so far, and he's just throwing people around like he always does, running right with him and AVT is unstoppable, really. If they're both right. So I'm feeling pretty good. I think the depth is scary. I think they have better depth than last season, though. So
yes,
as scary as it is, we've been through it. So I do want Jet fans to understand that. Like when we were starting Max Mitchell last year during, a little bit of a run, everyone forgot that we were starting him in the middle of a big run. It was kind of just like, yeah, he's playing all right. All right, let's keep winning. So the depth is like, it could be better. We were hoping that they would make more additions in the offseason, but at the end of the day, it's probably like middle of the pack in the NFL. And if everyone at the top performs up to their capability and they're all healthy, which is really the key for basically the entire season, I think they can get enough out of that offensive line to really have a functional offense.
Yeah, I agree. Just be middle of the pack. You don't need to be a top 10 offensive line. Middle of the pack is totally fine. It's better than what we've seen the last like 7 or 8 years. Russo, what are your thoughts now that Mekhi has officially won the job?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk so much about getting the best 5 out there, and I think if healthy that this is the best 5. I feel a lot better about the depth. I agree with Dan on that. Specifically on the interior, I think we all feel better, right? If there was someone to go down at center or guard spot, you feel better about who's filling in there. I wonder if, and that's really where the question comes in, right? Because you have 38, 39-year-old Dwayne Brown and then Mekhi Becton on the right side who's got a history of injury. So if one of those happens, then what's next? Do they kick AVT out to right, kick Mekhi over to left if Dwayne goes down, or something like that, some variation like that, because they do feel better about their. I mean, I'm assuming they feel better about their interior depth, but that's going to be the question. But I feel this is the best 5, and I do feel like if they stay healthy, that this could be a unit that performs in the top half of the league, and with the weapons that they have on offense, like if you get that, this offense could be scary good. They don't have to be, this whole line doesn't have to be 2009, 2010 good, but if they're 14 to 18 in the league, I think we got to feel pretty good about that. And I think that's enough to get this offense really to the next level, something that we haven't seen in a long time. Dan, I mean, is that like, what's your thought on if, worst comes to worst and we do experience an injury on either tackle spot? Like, is that what you think happens? Do they feel confident enough in a Max Mitchell or something to to keep the O-line the way it is, or would they kick AVT out to either tackle and then, kind of play, musical chairs there?
Yeah, I think that the key in all of that is going to be Schweitzer. They liked him a lot throughout the offseason. And then once AVT got healthy, they're like, okay, cool. You can rest.
Yeah.
But I think they like him a lot. So I do think that AVT would probably be the one, especially if it's the right tackle slot open, that would move out. He's good enough. He's probably better than their backup tackles, to be honest, at the position. And I think Schweitzer is just that much good enough on the inside that he would probably be the one to take over an inside role as AVT moves out. So I think that would probably be what they end up doing if we do come across that. Hopefully not.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you have an ace in your pocket with AVT. I mean, his ceiling is unbelievably high at guard, but to have the flexibility to kick out the tackle in the event you need it, I mean, that's something that not many other teams have. And I think we do have to kind of peel that back, right, Dan? Like when you think about it, like how many teams really feel good about their OL depth if one of their starters goes down? Dude, not many, right? So we're in the same boat as everybody. It's just we gotta hold it up, and it's an open wound from last year. That was really the biggest reason for the last 6 games of last year.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's offensive line is just not what it used to be. I feel like everyone's having the same issues. I mean, like, look, there's teams like Philly who have the best offensive line in the league. Kansas City has a good offensive line. San Francisco, you can go down the list of about like 5 to 6 teams. Dallas is not what it used to be. I remember Dallas when they had like Zach Bargan, Ty Smith, and Travis Frederick. They were like this insane offensive line. It's not the same anymore. Ty Smith is really old. Zach Martin's still very good, and they don't have Frederick anymore. So it's like it's a dying art, and like the Jets are in the same spot. Yes, they obviously have questions at the bookends, which is scary because ultimately that's like the fate of your quarterback, especially on the blind side. But like their interior is obviously very solid, assuming that Lakin can return to maybe like 80% of what he was in 2021. I'm not expecting him to be Pro Bowl Lakin. He's past 30 at this point. Typically, that's when you're going to see a little bit of a deterioration of play. But like, look, they just need to be average, like I said. And I do feel much better because Mekhi's in shape. He's showing that he can do what they're putting on his plate. The next step is, full 60 minutes. Can he do it? Like, we'll find out. I'm still a little scared. And like, I'm guarded because like, all of us were like, Becton is like icing on the cake at this point. Like whatever he gives you is like an added bonus because let's be honest, nobody thought he'd actually be starting on opening night. I mean, I'd be lying if I said to you a month ago that I believed that he was winning this job. But granted, they had a plan in place that none of us were aware of, and whatever it was, it worked. So a testament to them to figuring this thing out.
Just one more thing. Like the thing that I have to consistently remind myself of is as bad as 2020 was, right? Like Mekhi Becton was a bright spot. And I think I said it last week, but I go back to watching him like going to the sidelines and yelling at Adam Gase to continue to run behind him and on that left side. And that was with Frank Gore running the ball.
Ty Johnson too.
So
and Caleb Johnson.
Yes. So like, let's think about it now on the right side with AVT next to him and Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook running the ball. Right. So like, we have to, like kind of just appreciate it for a little bit. And let's hope that things play out the way that we think they can, because I think, honestly, if it just comes to 75, 80% of that, it could be scary good.
It really can. I do want to shift to the other side of the ball, the trenches on the defensive side. This is Dan's pride and joy. I can't
wait for this.
I know.
I'm so excited to hear Dan talk about this.
Dan, I hope that you don't feel a little too much pressure to deliver here, but
I almost knocked over my camera. I'm excited.
Dan, but I do want you to give us a little bit of a breakdown of your feelings on the room, because now it's finalized. We're all so happy that Tanzel Smart ended up coming back onto the practice squad, because I do think there's a chance he's called up to the big squad at some point, because injuries do happen and someone's going to be hurt in some capacity. So Dan, give us, a breakdown, maybe like your 3 favorite guys on the line, and then give us a big bold prediction and something that maybe like fans who aren't as like big into D-line play wouldn't necessarily think about when they're thinking about the trenches.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say the focal points on that defensive line, you're going to obviously look at Quinnen Williams, and then you want to take a look, of course, at Jermaine Johnson, who's on the rise right now. As much as Carl Lawson is seemingly healthy, from what we're hearing, he's going to be, practicing. I think Jermaine Johnson's kind of where to lean there, because they gave him the opportunity and he didn't mess up. He took full advantage of the opportunity he had. So I think that will probably get rewarded with more playing time. And yeah, so I think Quinton Williams, of course, Jermaine there, and then Bryce Huff is the other one for me. And there's so many people to choose from. Truly, not choosing JFM here is hurting me. But Bryce Huff, Bryce looked ridiculous in preseason. He looked like he didn't need to be playing with anybody else out there. He just beats everyone, and I love something that we always said, or we were saying towards the beginning of the preseason when he was kind of just playing around and messing with second and third string tackles. We were like, I mean, he does this against starters too. And then I think some analyst was saying something about it, and then he quote tweeted and was like, yeah, I do this against starters too. So it was good to see Bryce kind of like understand, like, yeah, no. Like, I'm not like everybody else. I'm one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So it's good to see him having that confidence that the rest of the defense seems to have. So yeah, I'm so excited about those three. I can't wait to see them in action. A lot of what we're gonna see, I think from a pass rush perspective, is the improvements of the edge players, particularly all the young ones, is only going to complement all the additions that they've made inside. We got a little bit of a glimpse of Quentin Jefferson, and it's absolutely terrifying for every opposing offensive line, because all he was saying all offseason was, I finally get to be in a defense where I get to be aggressive. And like the first splash play we see from him, he's just splitting guard and center and making a play in the backfield. And he's like, yep, yeah, like this is exactly what I was saying. Like, I finally get to be aggressive. I'm going to make some plays. So it's going to be really cool to see, because, yeah, I think I was worried about, Sheldon Rankin's departure and like all that, and how they would replace it. And they replaced it well. So they did a great job. I think the depth inside is where there's like a little bit of fear. But I think, man, with the talent that they have, if everyone can stay healthy, and I think they should, with John Franklin Myers not having to play edge as much, with the improved depth at edge, getting the kick inside a little bit more often, Quentin Jefferson supporting there, Al Wood supporting there. Yeah, I think, look, the ceiling is there. There is no ceiling. I truly think that they could be the best defensive line in the NFL if everyone stays healthy, and you get I talked about it a little bit on Buck the Trend. If you get the leap from Jermaine Johnson that he's shown so far, and honestly he's further along than I thought he would be at this point, then yeah, you're looking at like a team that could have the best defensive line in the NFL.
Oh my god! And like I obviously I yield to Dan here. This is your baby.
Yes.
This is no knock on you, because this is just how it goes when you're talking about the Jets. Like, we didn't even mention Will McDonald, right? And that's how the beauty of it. That's how it goes with this D-line group, is it's just so deep and there's so many guys, and like JFM's your favorite and you barely touched on him because there's so many other pieces. Yeah, Dan, I agree with you. I feel like this defensive line could be scary good, potentially the best Jets defensive line that we've seen outside of the sack exchange, which I think is it's beyond our times, but right. I've obviously heard stories. So, I mean, like, how good can this really be? Like, could they lead the league in sacks this year from this D line? Like, is that what you're thinking? Is that kind of the ceiling here?
So what I like, and this is, I'm going to work my way to my answer here.
Okay. Take your time.
What I like is that the AFC East has some terrible offensive lines.
That's true.
And they already exploited those offensive lines last year. The Buffalo game, just both tackles just getting wrecked for the entire game. It's only going to get worse, especially with further depth on the edge, further variety on the edge. Like, you're going to get, 6'2" Bryce Huff running circles around you. Then you're going to get like a Condor and Will McDonald, who's like, oh man, this guy's kind of built like Max, like a young Max Crosby a little bit. And then he's inside spinning you, and you don't know where his arms are going. And then you get Carl Lawson coming at you, who's like a vet, just like a muscle like just like a rocked up dude. You know what I'm saying? Like coming at you and like just running through your face. So like there's just so much variety that they can give to the offensive lines across the league. And I think specifically in the AFC East, they're going to run through those offensive lines because they're just not good. And they didn't get much better in the offseason. So I think that will give them a leg up on the competition. I think they're going to be top 3. I don't think they're going to be 1, only because the Steelers exist.
Interesting.
I think the Steelers are going to be ridiculous again. Their sack totals are insane. Again, every time I look at Highsmith's total from last year, because I think he had 15 and a half. I don't understand that. I don't know how that's possible. It's probably just all TJ Watt. But I think they have a special line there. And they have my guy, Nick Herbig, who I've been retweeting about all the entire preseason. So they're stacked. So I do think that they'll probably lead the NFL in sacks. But I think the Jets will probably be top 3.
Okay.
So it's the Jets, Pittsburgh, and who's third? Philly? You throw them in there?
Exactly. Yeah. I think the Jets can be second.
Okay.
I think if everything breaks right,
I can't act disappointed in that.
I mean, beggars can't be choosers. You know what's interesting, Dan? You didn't include Dallas, and a lot of people think Dallas could be the best defense in the league. I just think they have a lot more top-end talent. I don't think the depth is there, right? Yep.
100% agree. Yeah. I think Micah Parsons is one of the best players I've ever seen in my life. I think their defensive line is pretty good. I think their overall defense is like they're a good solid unit. I don't have that as much faith as I think everybody else does in their overall prospects.
So,
like you're saying, the top end talent is very good, but I think as a unit, I'm kind of like,
okay. Listen, that's fair. I mean, every unit is built differently, and it's different schemes. I mean, Quinn's a great play caller, so I do think they'll be really tough, and we get to see him week 2. So maybe you'll be taking that back after depending on how that game goes. But really quickly before we transition into some Hard Knocks talk, Dan, how would you compare the way this defense looks to what Saleh was running in 2019 when that Niners team broke out? Because I feel like that is kind of like the blueprint. It's different because the Jets secondary is significantly better than that one. So how would you compare the two?
So I think that I might have said this before, but I'm not sure. Say it
again.
I think that what Robert Saleh is doing right now with the Jets is a mix of everything that he's seen work on the 49ers and the Seahawks. I think I might have written about this. That was the difference, because I'm like, I don't remember these words coming out of my mouth. I think that the secondaries that, of course, he got to experience in Seattle, I think that he understood that having a lockdown or one or two lockdowns on the outside with solid slot play, he's like, great. If I can get 3 deep at corner, right, and I can add a dominant defensive front to that, then I'm actually okay. Like I can make do with a solid secondary and an attacking front that can get to the quarterback, and then of course figure it out on offense. I think that he's taken the defensive line approach from San Francisco. I think the piece in the middle is where I was always confused early on in Saleh's tenure. So like I don't get what his strategy is. A linebacker, I thought he'd be doing more. I thought he would try to get younger and more athletic, but really it was just like CJ Mosley body transformation, and that's literally it. He's like, give me anything. Give me a 7th rounder, I'll figure it out. Give me an undrafted guy, I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Like, don't worry. They basically just like him and Ulbrich have basically just agreed, like, don't worry about linebacker. And everything else is just a mixture of what the front from San Francisco and the secondary from Seattle. And it's working really well. So I think it's comparable to that San Francisco team, of course, in the attacking front. But yeah, the way that they've built the secondary is completely different. So it's really interesting to see. Yeah.
Dan, I got just one more question on the defense as a whole for you. I've said, for a while now on the show, and I think a lot of Jets fans agree, is like you can't take away how good that Jets defense was last year and how big of a jump they had from 21 to 22, right? But that last 6-game stretch, I think, teams kind of dinked and donked because they knew you get to 16, 17 points, you're probably going to win the game.
Yep.
How much does having Aaron Rodgers and an improved offense, in your eyes, really change the game for Saleh and this Jets defense overall? Really, I just have a feeling teams aren't going to be able to dink and dunk, right? Is that going to change the landscape for this Jets defense in 23?
Yeah, it's going to change everything. Teams were very, very safe against the Jets because they're like, I could run the ball 30, 40 times. It actually doesn't. This is like the key for the difference between last year and this year. A team can't say, I literally do not care if I get a first down on this drive because I know that's not going to do anything. You know what I mean? Like you're going to be constantly on edge, constantly trying to push the ball down the field, and it's going to lead to mistakes. And that's why, like, as much as the Jets didn't get any takeaways last season, it was like the one area that the defense didn't do well. A lot of that was because teams are just like, great, if you're not going to give us that, we don't need it. You know what I mean? We'll take what we can get. We'll try to move down the field. Eventually, you're going to get tired, and then we'll just keep running the ball. We'll keep moving the ball down the field because your offense isn't doing anything. They're just going to keep throwing you out there. You're going to get exhausted. Teams can't really rely on that anymore. They're just going to have longer drives. They're just going to put points on the board. Teams are going to have to be playing from behind. And the Jets, when they're up, and truly, I think if the Jets have a 2-score lead, the game is close to done, truly. Because you can't catch up to that. Like they're not going to slow down much with what they have, thankfully, in a good matchup. The offense can like sustain drives. They have 2 great running backs. The offensive line, if healthy, is going to be a lot. I feel a lot better about them running the ball than I do about pass protection. And you can tell that Saleh's been trying to instill that mindset of like you better like toughen the hell up this offseason because we're going to run the damn ball. And I think the offensive line's starting to get the point. But yeah, I think this is that type of season where if you can give them a lead, you can stack things up. Yeah, they're gonna close out the game for you. Like we saw a lot of that last year, where like the Bills game, right? We're kind of confused as to how the Jets were in the game the entire time. At home, and we're like, what's going on here? And then they eventually got like a 2-score lead, and you're like, wait, what's going on? And you see the defense, like when they get that big lead, and Josh Allen's like, well, I have to drop back now and try to get us back in the game. Defense is like, good luck. Bryce coming off the edge, strip the ball out, like that. Those are the type of games that we're going to get to see more often is, hey, we're behind. We got to pass the ball, and it's just not going to work.
And that's, I guess that's why you go get Aaron Rodgers, right? You get a 7 or 10-point lead, and then you let guys like Bryce Huff and Carl Lawson and Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald put yours back and just go get the quarterback. And you're rotating those 4 guys on the edge. Yes. And just, and they're fresh. And I think, I like Saleh's comments, finally kind of explaining the rotation a little bit more in depth. And it makes us understand a little bit better, because I know that was a gripe of mine in the early stages of Saleh's tenure here. It was like, well, Quinnen's the best player on the D-line. Like, why isn't he on the field? And now, as you see how deep it is, you truly start to get it. And he did a good job of explaining that too. Was listen, that's that right guard is fighting for his life, and he's dealing with fresh DLs every friggin' play. Like that's So I thought good by him on taking that question and answering it that way.
Yeah, and we all talk about this. The turning point is since that fight on the side of Ulbrich in the Cincinnati game. We've never questioned a thing that they've been doing from a strategy standpoint, because that is like a moment it clicked, because they obviously didn't play well on offense that week, but they started to figure it out on defense and then carried over to that major winning streak. So it's like just trust Ulbrich. And like now that you're seeing Ulbrich like behind the scenes in Hard Knocks, the guy's just the man. Like he's just crazy. I feel like he almost has like the Saleh as a defensive coordinator energy, where he's just like, so juiced up and just going crazy. And I feel like that's how Saleh probably was when he was just lead defense. But man, it is, Dan, people are going to listen to this doing live are just going to be like, wow, my eyes are lighting up thinking about the Jets going against the Buffalo offensive line, making Josh Allen's life hell. Because honestly, like, even in the second game that we lost, he had a lot of trouble against the defense. Like if he doesn't jump off sides, like our defense might be his kryptonite. It really might be. I mean, let's hope for, I'm knocking on wood because anything's possible, but I'm so excited.
Yes. Yeah. If especially off the edge, Josh Allen's ball security is, as long as he's been in the league, it's still not that great.
Stable, not as good either.
True. Exactly. And before we get off defensive line, I gotta say real quick, because you're right. I did it. I as much as I want to move on, I have to mention Will McDonald prospects. The key for Will McDonald is because basically what you're hoping for year one, before we saw the things that we saw, was like, great, get through year one, learn from everybody in front of you. You get a couple of reps in, you get maybe 2 or 3 sacks. So it's great. That's good stuff. Set you up for next year. I think the key will be to watch what happens with him and Jermaine Johnson. I think with Jermaine Johnson just exploding right now, it's pushing things a little bit, right? And Carl Lawson's health is a big factor there. Carl Lawson's contract is also running out. So We will see what will happen next year, and we'll see what will happen at the trade deadline. But I think that if Will McDonald can push, things will change. I will save that. I think that he looks really, really good. I think his pass rush plan is ridiculous. He's literally just playing around and trying stuff out, like, at this point. So I think if he can show that he's ready, it will speed up the plan, I believe, at edge. So I think it's something to keep an eye out for, because you don't keep your best players off the field. Basically, there's no reason to do that, especially this year.
Yep, you nailed it, and I appreciate this, Dan. Honestly, this was just like music to my ears. So I can listen to you talk about the defensive line and the defense in general for hours, because it's just, you break it down in a way that's just so enjoyable and just digestible for people who don't understand these things. Because, like, I didn't play. I don't know, Russo, I don't even actually know if you played or not when you were younger. Did you?
Nope.
Anyway, so I don't understand the intricacies the way you do. So it's like, oh man, it's so much fun here. So we will transition to Hard Knocks, and no one's going to debate this. It was the best episode, and I don't think that the 5th episode could top it. Like, endless amounts of things. The Sopranos with Saleh driving to the stadium was just incredible. I know Joe was probably feeling like a kid at a candy store watching that. They literally did it perfectly, and it's HBO. It's not even a competition between that and One Jets Drive. The whole thing with Rodgers and Jihad Ward. I mean, like, look, Rodgers, he has that fire. He's like saying, "Who are you?" Like, I don't even know who you are. It's Jihad Ward has been on 8 teams, just trying to say, "Oh, I don't know who Aaron Rodgers is." You've only been watching him probably your entire life. But like, but honestly, the coolest thing really was just seeing the Bronley and Xavier Gipson relationship, and also just really how high this team has been on Xavier Gipson. Like, I feel like we didn't really think that he had a shot at making the roster until maybe like the last week or so. It doesn't seem like he was ever in danger of not making the team. And think about this, like, Joe Douglas, he obviously has had his issues from a draft perspective, especially in 2020, but he's hit on a lot of UDFAs. And then there's also the man who's been frozen like Captain America, Tony Adams. It's crazy. Like, how do we get all these UDFAs? Bryce Huff as well. It's like, I'm just curious. I was just so excited. There were so many great moments of that episode, especially like Rodgers like yelling at the team and then obviously them responding. But Russo, what was your favorite moment from the show last night? Because it was incredible.
Well, yeah, and I think it gets better each and every episode. Like, I think for me, progressively, 2's been better than 1, 3 better than 2, and 4 better than 3. So who knows what could happen next week? But I think you hit on a lot of good ones. My favorite part, though, Steven, was the thing that you just mentioned, was the offense struggling in practice, Rodgers getting frustrated with it, Garrett, 17, step into my office, let's run this, let's figure this out, and them going down and scoring. That was just, honestly, it just was the perfect way to kind of summarize what Aaron Rodgers brings to this team. That was my favorite part of the episode. And I also, I got a soft spot for Nathaniel Hackett. I do. I liked him. The gold member stuff gets me, and talking in front of the team about celebrating together and all the hard work that goes in the gold zone, like all that stuff. That was my underrated part of last night's episode, but definitely favorite was just Rodgers kind of reeling people in. Let's go do this the right way. I'm going to get pissed off, and then we're going to go down the field and score.
Dan, what about you? What was your favorite moment from the episode?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many good moments. I love the, I, of course, definitely love the Aaron Rodgers moment there. I think the cool part about all of the footage that they have is like what the coaches do. And I think you can kind of see what they were talking about in the beginning of the offseason when they were like, yeah, this is like having another coach out there. Because I think one of the frustrating things about coaching a young team often you see is that coaches are like, I have to game plan, but then I also have to manage your attention, your expectations, and everything like that. And it's a lot, right? And having somebody like Aaron Rodgers out there to just kind of translate their frustration, I think is perfect. Because you could even with I think it was a previous episode, Randall Cobb's like, yo, if you don't get that right, he's gonna get pissed off. Like, just get it right. Right. And it's like, that's like, it's not a normal thing, of course, on any team that you have like a veteran player saying like, don't get this guy mad. But it's like, yeah, you have a Hall of Fame quarterback and he has expectations. You got to figure out how you're going to meet the expectation. And you can tell in those moments where he's frustrated, everyone's just kind of listening. Right. And he's just like going on a tire and everyone's just like, like waiting for the advice, waiting for something to come out, and they're like, "What's he gonna say? What am I trying to? What do I get out of this? What do I do?" And it's cool to see it because the coaches don't have to do that. The coaches can just game plan and figure things out. And I like Nathaniel Hackett's relationship with him because of like his general nature. It just meshes so well with Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is straight up telling them like, "That's not going to work. That's a stupid play." And he's like, he just kind of waits it out. And then sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong, and it is what it is. And he just keeps it moving. So I think it works really well. I think that's probably a lot of what other coaches would not be able to deal with or get frustrated with or will, feel salty about when the player leaves and then leak things about them. But I think that's where him and Nathaniel Hackett work really well together is Nathaniel Hackett's not going to be like pissed off about like, "Oh, Aaron doesn't agree with me." He's just going to be like, "Well, if it was a good play, it's going to work. If it's not a good play, it's not going to work." And then you just keep it moving.
Oh my God. Yeah. Listening to Hackett talking for the entire offense is just hilarious. He's just like, look, we all have had, our jokes about him, especially from his time in Denver. And it's like, I get it, but like, it seems like he's really beloved. And that's been something that was said about him, long before he took the Jets job, that like players really connected with him on a personal level because he's very relatable and he tries to make it fun versus like, he doesn't seem like a curmudgeon like Bill Belichick, who it's like, he has his pencil and he's just, if you don't do something right, he's going to yell at you. And it's like, it needs to be this way. He's like very, meticulous. It seems like Hackett is really willing to, talk to the players, understand their perspective. He's a younger coach. I think he's in his early 40s. And that's something that like shouldn't be lost like in translation with these things, because ultimately to me, it's like, how can you connect with players? And that's always like the one thing that Saleh, I think, does really well. And I think the staff also is, a reflection of that. And that's what Saleh like was looking for and how he put the staff together, even from like when he first started to now. And it's like, it's a refreshing thing because football's evolving. And I don't think you need to be like the Mr. Tough guy, Timmy Tough Nuts, whatever people like to say, kind of like a Joe Judge, where it's like all those things. I'm serious though. And
you're right.
I think that they try to let these guys be loose and understand that like it's just they're a different generation. Like they're on their phones and like they're more lax. They're not necessarily going to be like these like guys who are going to be like super like, I don't know, focused every second, and they have to figure out a way to make things more fun and relatable. And I really do appreciate that. So kudos to Martini Nate, because it seems like as weird as he is, the guys like him. And, if this offense is scoring touchdowns every week, I don't think anyone's going to care how it comes about and during the practice week, right?
Yep, exactly.
So Russo, this was something that you wanted to talk about. This is the best Jets team on paper since, for you to start.
For me to start. Okay. Well, I love questions like this. I love nostalgia. This comes down to two things for me, really. In my lifetime, the best teams have been 98, 04. I'd sprinkle 02 in there because that team really made a very nice run. And then you got 09 and 10.
Yeah.
I think the two that it comes down to for me are 2010 and 98. And I really think the question becomes like, how does the defense compare overall to those two teams? And then is the gap between Aaron Rodgers and the quarterback that we had bigger than the O-line gap, right? Because I think the O-line probably on the 98 and the 2010 teams were better than what the O-line is now. But I still think on paper, this is the best Jets team that we've seen. And I think the quarterback just makes that much of a difference. And I go back to like the magical years that we've experienced with quarterbacks as Jets fans in my lifetime. Is Vinny Testaverde in 98. He threw 29 and 7. It's Fitz in 2015, as magical as that was. He threw 31 and 10. And you got Pennington in 02, had a really, really nice year for those, 12 games. He threw 22 and 6. That would be like a mediocre year for Aaron Rodgers.
It's crazy.
And that's like the alarming thing. So, I mean, listen, they haven't played a game yet. I don't want to get out over my skis, but on paper, from a talent perspective, from a skill position perspective, balance, when you factor in how good this defense can be, this defense could be 09, 2010 level good. It's just different, right, Dan? Like, you're not going to send the house. I mean, Rex's MO was, I'm going to blitz one more guy than you can block. This is going to be totally different, but could it be better? It might be. I mean, because I think like you think about even just the defensive backfield as a whole could be better than what it was with Revis and, either Cromartie or Lito Shepherd, whoever else is over there. So really, I think this could be, honestly the best Jets team on paper that I've seen in my lifetime. If they stay healthy and things shake out, but right now at this point, that's kind of, I mean, the one comparable is 98, and that team was ridiculously good. But I mean, what are your guys' thoughts? Am I putting the cart before the horse? Probably a little bit. I'm excited, but I really do believe that.
I'm going to give this to Dan, and I'll cap it before we do record predictions.
You're not wrong. Honestly, the defense is perfectly created for the modern NFL.
Yes.
I think you'll see they get to match up. Of course, the Chiefs game is going to be really fun. I think that will tell a pretty big story there, because I think that the best teams in the AFC, they match up well with them because of what they built defensively. I think the other side of the ball, the difference of the quarterback is, like you said, it's monumental. There's never been anybody like the Aaron Rodgers that's come in and played quarterback for the Jets. They have a better running back room that they've had in a super long time. People have done like faint comparisons to like when they brought in LT, it felt kind of similar type of vibes. But the lead back is better than when they brought in LT.
I mean, listen, Sean Green isn't in the same stratosphere as Breece Hall,
not even
right?
close.
Like,
so
no one's saying Dalvin Cook is LT, but Sean Green and Breece Hall aren't even comparable. Like, it's not even close.
Exactly. So it's on paper, yeah, it really might be the best that we've seen.
And I don't think we haven't had a wide receiver of Garrett Wilson's caliber. Ever.
Right? Not that I've seen. I mean Brandon Marshall.
Zantz hates Keyshawn, but
no,
like
Keyshawn, I don't. Stop. That's not true. It's not true.
But 98 Keyshawn was incredible. But
yes.
I mean, Garrett Wilson could be better, is better, in my opinion. He's going to be better than Keyshawn.
Keyshawn said that he's better than him. He already said that. So
that's true.
The man is humble. He gets it.
Yeah.
But I will say, in terms of best Jets team on paper because we're saying I'm actually going to say 2008. I think the 2008 team was actually more talented low key than 2009 or 2010. 2010 was just a better coach team. And obviously, a lot of pieces came together. But that 2008 team was nasty. Like they were, if Brett Favre doesn't get injured, probably they could have went to the Super Bowl. I mean, Chris Jenkins was a beast. Like people don't forget how good people forget how good he was.
True.
2008. So that's like something to think about. Revis was young. He wasn't obviously as, 09 peak Revis, but that team was insanely talented. And obviously Rex inherited and added some pieces of guys he likes, like Bart Scott. 98, I was young, but I know that team is obviously amazing and, should have made the Super Bowl as well. But yeah, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that, like, just from a top to bottom perspective, when you look at everything, like the biggest hole in the Jets is really like linebacker and safety at this point. And like Dan said earlier in the show, linebacker is really not that important to this team. Obviously Mosley is, and if he's not there, it's going to look a little bit different in the middle of the field. But to me, like this I've never seen a defensive line that's so stacked the way this one is. Like, every single guy in the Jets defensive line could start on another team. Like even the last guy. So like Solomon, maybe not Solomon. No. everyone
9 out of 10.
But he has started in the past. But
started last
year. Debatable. But to me, like Michael Clemens is probably starting on another team. I think that, JFM obviously starts on any other team. I think Al Woods and Quentin Jefferson, I think both were rotational starters in Seattle. So it's just insane when you think about that. And I'm so excited. And I week one can't come soon enough. But yeah, it's just crazy, all the hype. And the one thing I wanted to touch on before we do quick record predictions, before we wrap the show, is this is something interesting that I actually really didn't know about. And Connor Hughes brought it to light yesterday on Twitter, just talking really about the state of the team as we head into week one. You got to give the Jets staff a lot of credit for really revamping what they're doing from a medical science perspective. I don't think that that's been talked about enough, because I remember when Gase was here, everybody was getting like soft tissue injuries every single practice. Like, do you remember there was a point we didn't know who was going to play wide receiver, I think in 2020, because every single guy was injured. Like Mims, I think, missed the entire camp. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed like there was always something. And like the only guys that really, I would say, who are, players on the team that are actually injured right now is Carl Lawson, and who's the other person, right? Is it Schweitzer? Like, that's it. Right? Who else? Am I missing anybody? I guess Dwayne Brown. Well, like, just coming. Yeah. But like, think about that. Like, the Jets have always been like, this guy will get hurt if he comes to the Jets, and they've revamped everything they're thinking about. And I think that they approach things differently, and we used to kind of get on them, especially with Makai last year. And they've changed that approach because he seems like he's in a really good place mentally, and it's just not something that's talked about enough. And I want to give them credit where they deserve it. And it's just a really pleasant thing that as Jet fans, we've not really seen, because they've always had terrible luck with injuries up until this offseason, knock on wood. So.
It's a very good point. It is. And I think, that 2020 year, I think we trotted out Chris Hogan as starting wide receiver in the first week, right? Like,
oh my God.
Well, so yeah, I think obviously it needed to be done, and credit to the staff. I think it's a very good point, Stephen, by you and Connor Hughes.
Yeah, I took it from him, but I just wanted to give him some credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so last segment of the show, record predictions. Dan, you go first. What is your record prediction for the Jets in 2023?
So this is my prediction, and I can't guarantee I'm sticking to it. But if I get off of it, it's going to be better. This is like the floor here, and it's going to be 11-6. I think 11 wins is very reasonable for the Jets. I think they have a tough start to the schedule. I think, as like every Jet season, there'll be some surprise wins and some surprise losses.
Yep.
But I think 11-6 is very much in reach for them. Yep.
Oh, okay. Russo, what about you?
I'm just beaming with optimism right now. There's a big part of me that wants to go 13-4, but I'm going to pull it back a little bit and say 12-5. I don't think it's crazy. A young team, new quarterback. It's a new offense for everybody outside of Aaron Rodgers. So I think you have to factor that in with really a tough start to the schedule. So it wouldn't surprise me if they start like 3-3 and then kind of hit their stride as the schedule softens up a bit. But yeah, I really do want to say 13-4, but I think it ends up shaking out at 12-5. But I think they give the AFC East a run. I really do, because I'm not, when you talk about it, and I'm getting on a soapbox here, I apologize, but I think Buffalo is going to take a step back. They're still going to be good, but I think they're going to take a step back, and I'm just not a believer in Miami and Tua. I don't think Tua can stay healthy for 17 games. So as good as their weapons are, I just don't think it matters as much. And it's a great year when you can really talk about New England being in the basement of the AFC East. So I think the Jets really could make a run at the division, but I think 12-5 is where it ends up.
Okay. So I'm going to stick with Dan here. I think 11-6 is the sweet spot, because it gets you over that double-digit win mark, which we've been desperately craving since 2015. I do. I know. And I think that they are going to be a work in progress on offense. And I'm highlighting this actually in a piece for Badlands. And I think that they probably will start closer to 3-3. It is a tough first 6 games, but I do think they'll surprise and steal one of the ones that we don't expect, maybe Philly or Kansas City. But I do think over time, it's going to be similar to what you saw with Brady in his first season in Tampa. It was a kind of a rocky start, and people were questioning, is this going to work? And then over time that they really hit their stride and won a lot of games in a row. I do think they will have one late in the season stinker against a team that they should absolutely beat, because one, that's the Jets. Number two, I think that every good team always has a game that they lose that you're like, how did they lose that game? Kansas City lost to Indianapolis, who was horrific last year. So I think that they're going to have that one game that we're all going to be like, how did they lose that game? And that's just the way it goes. But yeah, 11-6. And I think the offense continues to improve week over week, even though there'll be some bumps in the road. And I think we're really going to see Breece Hall take off really as the month of November hits. I think that's what he's going to start to look a lot like the guy that we saw, in that 4-game winning streak they had in 2022. So I'm excited, but it's, nothing's happened yet. So we got to see it before we believe it, right?
The good part about those first 6 games is that those real tough ones are all at home. Buffalo at home, New England at home, Kansas City at home, Philly at home. So that makes you feel a little better, because you figure kind of, maybe some things just go in their favor, and being the home team gives them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. But I agree. I don't think 3-3 are, really is out of the question there. But that first 6 is going to be, they're going to be tough.
Yeah, I agree. Dan, anything you want to plug for Buck the Trend this week? Anything before we wrap?
So tier list is going to come back, as I mentioned. Probably going to be recorded with Greg this week. When it will drop is a little up in the air, so I'll let you know. We might actually do a double episode this week. So be prepared for potentially 2 really quick Buck the Trend episodes at some point in the next 7 days. But we're going to finish up defensive coordinator tier list and then might do a little bit of either head coach or might do some randoms because I know that everybody loves that version of the pod. So
love it.
Yeah.
And guys, make sure to check out Dan's pod on the Badlands feed, Buck the Trend, typically on Fridays, but as you said, it might be a little bit different because the season is coming up. Also, make sure to follow him on Twitter for that amazing D-line breakdown, especially when you have the film clips once the season comes into work at Jets and Jal of. Make sure to subscribe to this show on YouTube, youtube.com/@BadlandsTOJ, or on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, wherever you get it. Turn on the Jets live. And obviously, make sure you get Badlands if you're not a Patreon subscriber. Season preview guides coming out. A lot of great content. It's basically every single day, and you can't really beat it. We appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you guys soon.